Hey guys, welcome to another VATSIM video here on the AviationPro channel. In this video we're going to make a full flight from A to B, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it all the way from looking up where there's some ATC until parked at the gate. So guys, this is the last video of the VATSIM 2017 tutorial series. Basically, I'm going to bring together all the information from the previous videos into one big video. We're going to fly a flight on the VATSIM network. We're going to be flying from Copenhagen in Denmark to Milan in Italy. And I'm just going to show you all the steps of how I make a flight, and I will basically combine it with the information of my previous videos. Now, if you haven't watched those videos yet, make sure you do so you really are up to par with the knowledge of those videos that I will use in this video. And I'm not going to show you everything in super detail, but if you want to find out more detail, make sure you check out my other videos of this tutorial series, so you can exactly see how to program the flight management system, for example, or how to make a flight plan. A lot of information is covered in those videos. So I'm thinking about making a VATSIM flight tonight. I'm free, there's no one to disturb me tonight, so it looks like a perfect evening to make a VATSIM flight. Well, what's the first thing that you need to do? Of course, you need to determine what kind of flight you're going to make, and this all depends on air traffic controller availability. So let's take a look and find out. So let's check for some ATC activity. Again, you can use a tool like here, Surf Info. This is a very old tool. You can use VATSPY or AccuMap, or if you have an iPhone or iPad, you can also use VATMap to show current ATC activity, but also bookings. So this is Surf Info. If I click on the VATSIM button, I get the current traffic. But what I'm more interested in is the bookings. So I can click this button right here and go to today, and I can see all the ATC that's booked for today. So as you can see, there's ATC in Copenhagen. I already gave away my flight, so I'm going to fly from Copenhagen to Milan, and indeed it looks like there's some good ATC in this region. So this is going to be a very nice flight, and we should have pretty much full coverage throughout. Only this part of Germany is not included, but it doesn't matter. It also allows me to show you how UNICOM works. But as you can see, we have here Copenhagen ground online, tower, approach and departure, and the radar controller. And then when we arrive in Milan, we have at least the approach controller and also center controller. So maybe not tower, ground and delivery, but that's okay. Then approach controller will take over the responsibilities of tower, ground and delivery. So it will be a nice flight. And of course, you can also check the VATSIM website to take a look at events. If you're a new pilot, I would not recommend to join an event immediately because it can be very busy and overwhelming. But I'm an experienced pilot already, so it doesn't matter if I join an event. And as you can see, indeed, there's an event tonight in Italy. Italy for Christmas, because it's almost Christmas right now. And apparently they're staffing some airports with air traffic control. So we have guaranteed coverage here at least, but also in Copenhagen. There's a weekly event where Copenhagen is always online on Mondays. So that's good to know. But at least we know now that there are some events taking place on the network. All right, so that's another way to check for ATC activity. So Copenhagen to Milan it is. So now that we have a flight, it's time to look for some charts and some information about the airports. And you can just go to the local VAC websites for this to find out more information. You can just type something like VATSIM Italy, and it will usually take you to the division of Italy in this case, or the country that you're looking for. So here we can find some information. We have some charts, and that's what we need to have. Apparently it sends us to another website, so we're just going to try that out, see if it works. And indeed we have some charts here. We can just download them. Let's take a look what that looks like, if they're kind of up to date or not, and if not, we might need to use another source. So this is effective on the 25th of May 2017, so it looks like these charts are pretty up to date, so I don't have to worry about that too much. And usually on a website like this of the local VAC that you're flying to, you can find out some more information. For example, if you're first-time visitors, okay, we can see some information if we're flying from the Italian airspace, what kind of flight level we need to use, things like that. So it looks good. Same for VATSIM Scandinavia, we can look up some information. So I'm just gonna type in VATSIM Scandinavia again, because I know that the Denmark area control space also falls under this division, so we can probably find some information about Denmark here as well. And as you can see here also we have a pilot section. We can probably find some things. We have a link to the charts, so I can download my charts here and can print them out, put them on your iPad, or maybe you have a Navigraph subscription, so you can get charts payware, so we don't have to go through this process. But it's in general good to get some charts, you know, in the first place. If it's freeware, that's perfectly fine. And as you can see, we have here the Aeronautical Information Publications of Denmark, which this fact links to. So we can go to the AIP of Denmark, where then you kind of look for, well, you want to go to AD, which stands for aerodrome. I'm not going to pronounce it in the Danish way, but we can see an overview of all the aerodromes. So we can probably take a look. Well, we're going to be flying from Copenhagen Kastrup, Echo Kilo Charlie Hotel, and here we also have the links to all charts. So I'm going to put these charts in Dropbox so I can view them on my iPad. And also here from VATSIM Scandinavia, we can probably view some more information about the airports in Denmark, maybe Copenhagen, since we're flying from Copenhagen. Okay, this is the frequencies that we're going to use. Sceneries, well, I've got the latest sceneries for both airports, one by Flight Tampa and one by Aerosoft, so I think that should be fine. And you can here see some more information that might be useful if you're new to the VATSIM network. So make sure you give this a read through. And basically we're now at least done this part of the preparation for our flight. So I'm now over here to the right, and now we have some charts and information about the airport. We can take a look at flight planning. First of all, you need to know what airline and flight you're going to fly, of course. So what I always like to do is kind of take a look what airlines are flying from Copenhagen and then where they fly, for example, to Milan, Malpensa in this case. So we have EasyJet, we have Norwegian Air Shuttle, which could be a good choice, Scandinavian Airlines. Yeah, those are the three airlines that fly this flight. So I know Scandinavian Airlines has a 737, so I'll just pick Scandinavian Airlines. Then I usually take a look at something like Flight Radar 24. Take a look at Copenhagen. Here you can also see which runway is active as well. You can see that they're landing on this runway, taking off this runway. So that's already some information that you can get from this real-world source. So we'll take a look at Copenhagen. There's some departures. We can take a look for Malpensa, Milan. Looks like this one, SK687, is flying to Malpensa. Maybe sometime later in the evening when I'm going to fly this flight. So there's an EasyJet flight. I don't have the Airbus, so I'm not going to pick that flight. And some Ryanair flight, but I think I'll just pick Scandinavian Airlines flights. And then the last one that they fly this day, so there will be Scandinavian 687. Normally this flight is flown with an Airbus, but that's okay on VATSIM if you use a different aircraft. Nobody's gonna blame you for that. If we can take a look at some of the history of this flight, we can take a look at this one, for example, that was executed yesterday. We can also see the call sign Scandinavian 687. It could be an alphanumeric call sign, for example, Scandinavian 68 Kilo or whatever. So always kind of take a look if that flight uses alphanumeric call sign or not. And maybe we can see something, okay, like it flew at 37,000 feet, so we'll probably have an odd flight level as well for our cruising phase, and then it descended into Milan. So that's some kind of the information that you can retrieve from a real life source like this. So it's going to be Scandinavian 687 for us today, using the Boeing 737-800. So based on this information, I can start the flight planning process. I'm using PFBX, but if you want to use a freeware flight planning tool like SimBrief, that's perfectly fine as well. They're pretty similar and should work the same way mostly. So I'm going to add a flight, and we're going to be flying Scandinavian Airlines. So our call sign was Scandinavian 687. So Scandinavian 687. And SAS is the ICAO code, and that's also going to be the code that we're going to use to log in on VATSIM. I'm going to be flying from Copenhagen to Milan, so I enter the ICAO codes of the airports. Here we have the routes, and I'm going to be using the Boeing 737. It doesn't really matter which registration you use as long as the aircraft is correct. So we have the 737-800 with winglets, and we're gonna save that for now. Well, standard time of the scheduled time of departure. Well, let's say I want to depart at 1900 Zulu, so we'll just put it in there. That's 8 o'clock local time. It still takes a while before this flight takes place, but that's fine for now. So we're gonna hit save and we're gonna plan the flight. And we're just gonna review the information. Scandinavian 687 flying from Copenhagen to Milan Malpensa. The takeoff runway is probably runway 22 right, which we just saw in Flight Radar 24. And we can take a look at the weather for this. You can see that in Copenhagen the wind is 210 degrees at 8 knots. So one of the 22 runways is likely to be used. And in this case they're probably using 22 left for landing and 22 right for departure, so we're going to select that. In Milan the weather, the winds are variable at 2 knots, and tonight it looks like it's going to increase a little bit, 030 degrees at 6 knots. So probably one of the 35 runways is most likely to be used here, maybe 35 right or something like that. So we'll select that, and if anything changes during the flight, that's perfectly fine. Taxi in and taxi out will just take 10 minutes. It's an international flight. Let's just say it's scheduled. We're just departing a little bit later than the real world flight. So the Boeing 737, all this information is correct. So just make sure you add an aircraft in PFPX, and we can take a look at the payload. So I'm just going to click random. Well, this looks fine to me. Nice and heavy, pretty close to the 0 fuel weight. So that's good. Regarding fuel, I'm just going to use EU ops. So European Union operations basically, so that we have enough fuel on board when we land. But since it's an event at Milan, and it's probably also pretty busy in Copenhagen, it might be wise to take a little bit of extra fuel and also some fuel for holding. Especially when there's an event on VATSIM, it can get very busy and you might need to wait a little bit before you can land. So it's good to take some extra fuel with you when it's expected to be very busy. On the other hand, there are a lot of airports active in Italy tonight, so maybe Malpensa will not be hugely visited, but we'll see. It's always good to take some extra fuel when you expect to be delayed during your arrival. Costs we can ignore. Then route, we'll just use the find function, see what it comes up with. Well, here we go. Here we have the route. Looks pretty good to me. We're just going to validate that, especially if you fly in Europe. You can see, if there are any restrictions on this route and how to fix that. So I'm just going to click the validate button. Let's see what it comes up with. I think I might want to use a odd flight level for this one, and as you can see, it comes up with some errors. So I'm just gonna, there's an error. It's stating something about flight level 355 until flight level 999. So all the way up. Maybe if I click flight level 350, it will fix something. Alright, there's still an error here, as you can see, regarding waypoint Akasu. That's the last waypoint on our route. So I might want to take a look at the real world flight plan to see what's going on there. Maybe I can get some information from that. So I'm going to go to the real world flight plan database on this website, and I'm just going to search for this route. Maybe there's a recent flight plan for this route that might give us any information. So here's one, Scandinavian 9239er. That's from July 2017. Let's see what it comes up with. It seems that the route is pretty similar, also ending at Akasu. But I see that this aircraft has been descending to flight level 210 already beforehand. For example, here at Degat, flight level 210. So it might be wise to maybe put that as a restriction in PFPX. So the way you can do that is, so we have here our initial airspeed 494 true airspeed and flight level 350, and maybe I can put it here a slash here, and then flight level 210, see if that works, and then click validate, see if it comes up with any errors. Well, it's passed the validation, so apparently we already need to make sure that we're at flight level 210 before this waypoint in the airway. So we're just gonna take that into account, and we'll just enter that in PFPX in a moment, so that's fine. Alternate, let's take a look for alternates, which airports would be suitable. It really depends on the airline that you fly. We can just pick one alternate tonight. For example, you can pick Milano, Linate. That's another airport close by. If you want to fly a little bit further, you can also do that. For example, divert all the way to Zurich or Geneva. But I'm just going to pick Linate as an alternate airport for tonight. And we're going to find a route for that. And I'll just keep it that way. So that's the basic flight plan done. Since we have a restriction on our route, I'm going to add that in the advanced step. So here we can add some restrictions. So for example, we want to be at waypoint Degat, we want to be at flight level 210. So I'm just going to add that to the flight plan. Okay, that's our flight plan basically. Make sure you give it a good read through and that everything is correct. And then later tonight I will actually compute the flight plan and make sure that I have the latest information. Okay, so now it's a little bit later in the evening. It's now time to actually compute the flight and generate the flight plan that we'll use. I'll just have another look at the weather, see if anything has changed. Wind is still from 210 degrees around about at Copenhagen. There's some light rain in the area, scattered clouds at 1200, broken at 4000, the temperature is 3, dew point is 1, QNH is 1024, and temporarily it's going to become broken at 1200 feet. Weather at Malpensa looking good, 150 degrees 3 knots currently, so it's still a bit unsure whether we use the north or the south runways. Scav okay, so clouds and visibility are okay. Temperature is 2, dew point is -9er, QNH is 1023 and no significant change is expected. So the weather at both airports looks good. I'm just going to leave the runways as they are. I'm just going to change the departure time to 20 minutes later because the air traffic controllers will only officially be online after 1900 Zulu, so it doesn't make sense to immediately ask for clearance once they come online. Just give some time to it, and then we'll depart at 1920 Zulu. And the rest of the flight plan is looking good, I think. Nothing has to be changed. Our route is correct, and we've entered the restriction here at this waypoint to be at flight level 210. So in this case, we can compute the flight. So I've computed the flight, and well, here we have a summary of all the fuel that we need and our payload. And here's the actual flight plan itself, where we can review all the waypoints, the weather, and things like that. We'll just take a look at that when we're in the cockpit. One thing I want to do as well is calculate takeoff performance. It's optional, you don't have to do that, but I kind of find it fun to do. I'll use a flaps 5 takeoff with optimum thrust configuration. Air conditioning will be on. Anti-ice, well, actually anti-ice might be required because the temperature is below 10 degrees Celsius and it's pretty rainy and cloudy in the Copenhagen region, so we'll have engine anti-ice on. Runway 2 to right, and it's wet, probably due to the rain once we depart, so we'll just take that into account. We'll calculate that and then we'll apply that to the flight plan. Same for the landing performance. Probably have a flaps 30 landing, manual landing, air conditioning on. Anti-ice, well, I'm not really sure. We could probably leave it off if the clouds are okay, if there are not too much clouds, not too much damp weather in the area, then it should be fine. Runway 35 right, well, I think that's okay for now. It doesn't matter a huge deal, but it's always nice to have these calculations with you. And I'll apply that to the flight plan as well. So we have here all the takeoff and landing performance. And yeah, this is our flight plan. We should be good to go. If we want to take a look maybe at the winds, it looks like we're going to have quite a bit of nice tailwind. We're going to be flying at flight level 350. As you can see, the wind's coming from this direction. So here's almost 100 knots. So it looks pretty good. This should speed up the flight quite a bit. So I don't think we'll expect too much trouble and turbulence. Don't see any of that either. So I think we're good to go with this flight plan. If your flight plan has been, has been generated, if it looks okay, then it's time to start building up your home cockpit. Okay guys, so once you've built up your home cockpit, make sure you're sitting comfortably, take some water or coffee or whatever beverage you prefer with you, so you can fly your flight comfortably, and we can start our flight at this point. So I'm running prepared, and what you want to try to achieve is to start your aircraft at a realistic gate if you can. So this is a real world flight, so I looked up on Flight Radar where the flight of yesterday started, and that's kind of a good indication which terminal or gate even you can use. Of course, you can also look up on the internet which terminal your airline uses, or whether your terminal is an international or domestic terminal, or Schengen or non-Schengen, and based on that information you can pick your favorite or your appropriate gate. So we're gonna fly the Boeing 737 of Scandinavian Airlines, and I'm gonna start up the flight at Copenhagen, and Bravo 4 seems to be the gate that was used yesterday, so that looks good. I'm gonna be running Active Sky as my weather add-on, so I have realistic weather, and I have some other software running like remote flight in order to control the radios on my phone, which makes it easier, a lot easier when flying, and especially when you're changing a lot of frequencies, that makes it a lot easier. And basically, well, just make sure you're flying real time if you can. It's more realistic, and it also, if air traffic controller asks you to be at a waypoint at a specific time, or they request your estimated time of arrival at a specific waypoint, and at least you have the accurate and current time in your sim settings. So I'm just gonna reset it to the system time. As long as your GMT time is correct, that's the most important. So currently the GMT here is 1817, local time is now 1917, but GMT is 1817. As long as that's correct, then it should be fine. So 1917 local time should automatically give me 1817 GMT time. So if that's set up, we can launch the simulator. There we go. So guys, welcome to the cockpit of the Boeing 737 of Scandinavian Airlines. I'll just show you around a little bit here at Copenhagen Airport. As you can see, we're nicely parked at the gate, and I'm not connected to the VATSIM network yet, because the first thing that you kind of have to do is to make sure that the aircraft is correctly configured, of course, so in terms of fuel and weight. So we'll just go to the FS Actions menu of the BMDG 737 aircraft, and here we can load the fuel, for example. So as you can see on our flight plan, we have a release fuel of 7,839 kilograms of fuel. So that includes all the fuel that we need for the flight, for the reserve fuel, for the alternate fuel and things like that, and the hold fuel that we took into account. So I'm just going to put in 7840 here in the total fuel amount, and it should balance itself out in this particular airplane. Of course, it might be different for your add-on airplane, but it should work pretty similar. Then we have the weight, so I'm just going to put in the zero fuel weight here. So that's the weight without the fuel, is 60,798 kilograms, so 60.798. And we're going to put that here nice and heavy. As you can see, the aircraft is pretty much full today. Alright, so if that's all set, you can basically start up and start programming in the flight management system. But before we do that, we're going to connect to the VATSIM network and follow our flight plan. Alright, so I've started up vPilot. It's time to connect to the VATSIM network. As you can see, once you run vPilot, it will connect to the simulator. And make sure you also do some model matching so you're able to see other aircraft correctly, which is kind of nice when you're connected to the VATSIM network. So we're going to hit the connect button. I have here my aircraft already. Scandinavian 687 is my call sign for tonight. Type code is an ICAO format, so Boeing 738. Be careful if you're flying an aircraft like the 777, there are multiple ICAO codes for the different types, so make sure you get the correct ICAO code. You can just look it up. And a cell call, we don't really need that right now because we're not flying over the ocean, so I'm not going to fill it in. So once that's all set up, we can hit the connect button, and then we should be connecting to the VATSIM network. Let's take a look. As you can see, we're now connected. There's some information right here, and as you can see, there are already some controllers popping up that are in the neighborhood of Copenhagen Airport. And it looks like we already have ATIS tower online, so that's looking good. So we can start our flight smoothly. So
Once you've done that, it's time to fill in the flight plan, of course. That's very important. So let's take a look. So click the flight plan button, and then we're just going to fill in all the information regarding our flight. So we're going to be flying IFR, of course. We're going to be flying from Copenhagen to Milan Malpensa, again in ICAO format. Our alternate is Milano Linate Airport, which is Lima India Mike Lima. Departure time is set at 1920 Zulu. That's half an hour from now on, as you can see. 1920 Zulu. Time en route, I'm just gonna use the trip fuel for that. So our endurance, that's 1 hour and 32 minutes in the air, and we got a total fuel available of 3 hours and 21 minutes. That's again our release fuel. Cruise speed is the true airspeed at our top of climb, which in this case is 445 knots. And our cruise altitude is planned for flight level 350. So we're just going to put that in right here. Equipment, you can also look it up on Google what the different type of equipment codes are. I use L. I'm not a heavy aircraft. If I were to be a 747, then I would use heavy aircraft, for example. Route, we're just going to put it in here. As you can see, the restriction right here is not in there, the flight level 210 restriction, because we're already descending at this stage. But if you want to put something like that in, just put a slash in there, then November for the airspeed, the true airspeed, for example 455, and then the F for flight level, and then 210, something like that. And that will indicate that you will be at that flight level and at that speed at that waypoint. So that's all good to go. And the remarks, we'll just leave that empty. We don't need any of that. And we have send and receive capabilities. We can both send and receive voice on VATSIM. We're not a text pilot. So again, just give it a review. IFR Copenhagen to Milan, Malpensa, alternate airport Milano Linate, departure time 1920 Zulu. Time en route 1 hour 32 minutes, fuel available for 3 hours and 21 minutes. Cruise speed 445 true airspeed, cruise altitude 350. This is our route, seems to be correct, and it's good to go. So I click the file flight plan button, and we should now be ready to go. We can go back to the cockpit to prepare the airplane. So welcome back into the cockpit. I'm just going to go through the pre-flight procedure. We're got about 25 minutes to departure, so it's a good moment to really start the flight right now. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the panel. I'm just going to turn on one fuel pump for the APU. The rest looks okay. I can already turn on these hydraulics right here. And then we'll go through the flight management system and prepare the route that we have today. So we're going to be flying from Copenhagen from runway 22 right, we'll just plan that for now. And destination is Milan. Our flight number is going to be Scandinavian 687. And I also like to put that here on the yoke so that if necessary I can easily see my flight number if I tend to forget it. You never know. Departure from runway 22 right. What is planned in our flight plan is the Nixon 1 Charlie departure. So we'll just select it right here. If we receive a different departure, then we'll just prepare that later on. Then we just continue our route, and we're just gonna fill in the rest of the flight basically in here. So after Nixon, we're gonna be flying via Tango 503 to next waypoint is Schiphol. Then via Uniform Tango 503 we're gonna be going to Mike India Charlie. Then Uniform November 850 we end up at Degat. And then Zulu 424 we end up at Akasu. There we go. And I always like to plan an arrival as well. For that I would have to look at the chart exactly which arrival we have, but since we planned runway 35 right, I'm just going to select this arrival, the Akasu 2 Hotel, and then ILS runway 35 right. I'm just going to pick at least one, and maybe in transition as well, so that I at least have something planned in, which gives me a more accurate estimated time of arrival and fuel calculation. But you can always change that later, of course, that's no problem. So that's the route, and we'll hit execute. Performance, we'll just put in the gross weight here, or the zero fuel weight in this case. Our reserves, we have to go back to the flight plan again. Final reserves is 1.1 plus alternate fuel is 0.9, let's make it 2. And we have a cost index of 30. Our cruise altitude today is going to be flight level 350. For the cruise wind, I'm going to put in the wind at the top of climb. As you can see on the flight plan, that's 010 at 098. So quite a lot of wind from the north, giving us a nice tailwind today. The outside air temperature at top of climb is -59, so put that in here. And the transition altitude at Copenhagen, for that we have to look at the chart. So I'll just open a departure chart here. The transition altitude is 5,000 feet here at Copenhagen. Just going to hit execute in the meantime. And we can go back to our flight plan to put in the data about the takeoff performance for the engines. So as planned per the flight plan, we're going to use derated thrust 2 takeoff, and the outside assumed temperature is going to be 32 degrees centigrade, and that should be okay. Flaps 5, and we're going to set a trim setting, and V1 is 135 in this case because the runway is wet, so it's a bit lower. Rotate is 144 according to the VFBX flight plan, and V2 is 149er. So I'm just going to put in the data. I'm also going to set 149er here on my mode control panel. There we go. 149er set. It looks like it starts raining here, by the way. And the trim setting, also make sure you put in that for departure. Make sure that's correct. Alright, and then you can also put in some other data. For example, I like to put in here the average wind in this route data page. So the average wind is going to be 019er at 067. So the other wind was to calculate the top of climb accurately, but for the rest of the cruise we can put in the average wind and hit execute. And the rest of the flight plan should be okay. We can just put in a transition level to make it easy. And if we look at the progress right now, we're going to be arriving in 2032 Zulu. So our departure time is in 18 minutes, so we should be arriving pretty nicely on time tonight. So I'm just going to run the aircraft through the pre-flight checklist. Oxygen is tested 100%, navigation and transfer switches, display transfer switches are normal and auto, window heat is on, pressurization mode selector is auto. The flight instruments we got heading 099 and 099. Altimeter is, we'll just have to set the correct altimeter, by the way. I'll have to look at the weather for that. So it seems that the current QNH is 1024 here in Copenhagen, and it gives us an altitude of 0 feet. The parking brake is set and the engine start levers are cut off. So pre-flight checklist completed, and right now is actually a good time to ask for your clearance. But before we do that, we have to listen to the ATIS to get to know all the information about the airport. And it looks like the ATIS is already online, so we're going to tune that frequency. Tonight of the ATIS, I'm just going to increase the lights here a little bit, is 122.75. So let's take a listen.
Copenhagen Airport, departure and arrival information. Delta, Metaport time 1850. Expect ILS approach. Visual approach on request. Runway in use for arrival. 22 left. After landing, please expedite vacating runway. Runway in use for departure. 22 right. Transition level 60. Wind 230 degrees. 11 knots. Visibility more than 10 kilometers. Light drizzle. Sky condition overcast 1,000 feet. Temperature 3 dew point 2 QNH 102 4. Temporary sky condition. Broken. 800 feet. At first contact with clearance delivery. State if unable to follow SID. When commencing pushback. Squawk Mo Charlie. This was Copenhagen Airport. Departure and arrival information. Delta. This is Copenhagen.
Alright, so we've received some information. We know that runway 22 right is active, so indeed we can expect the next 1 Charlie departure. And the information is Delta, so the only thing we don't know about our clearance yet is our squawk code. There was also some other information, like if you're unable to follow the SID, then you have to report it with delivery. Well, we are able to because we're flying a 737, we know what we're doing, so that should be no problem. And also you have to squawk mode Charlie after the pushback, so that means that you have to put your transponder to the active mode after pushback. So just keep that in mind at some airports that is requested. So at this stage we should be ready to ask clearance, so let's go to Copenhagen delivery if that is online. Looks like only ground is online, so we'll just start with the first frequency 121.9er, and then we can ask some clearance. And when we receive our clearance, we can further prepare our departure. Great, so I'm just waiting now until we can get through. There's still some chatter going on. So our call sign that we have to call up is Kastrup ground. So you can also see that in VPilot what the correct call sign is. So looks like we're ready to go. So let's ask some clearance. Kastrup grounds, good evening, Scandinavian 687 at stand Bravo 4 with information Delta, requesting clearance to Milan Malpensa.
Scandinavian 687, let's go ahead. Kastrup to Milan Malpensa, be the next one shot, departure runway 22 right. Time initially flight number 70, squawk 7334.
Clear to Milan Malpensa via the Nexon 1 Charlie departure, runway 22 right, climb initially flight level 70, squawk 7334, Scandinavian 687.
Scandinavian 687, read back correct.
Alright, there we go, we have our clearance, so we're going to put in the squawk code in the transponder. 7334, and the call sign was, by the way, Kastrup apron, so it can either be ground or apron. It really depends on the airport, it's different every time. We indeed have the Nexon 1 Charlie departure, and the initial climb altitude is flight level 70, so we're going to put that in. And yeah, based on this information we can prepare the rest of the flight. So let's take a look. So once we're now, I'll just start with the ground chart, by the way, to really start this flight from. So we'll probably start a pushback here at Bravo 4 to the left, so in this direction, and then we can expect to taxi probably via Yankee or Zulu, I'm not really sure, or maybe just straight ahead via Alpha. We can cross via Alpha to runway 22 right, and we'll just see what happens when we arrive there. Just probably go to Alpha 1. So that's the part on the ground that we can expect, and it's always good to give this a good review to make sure that you know what you're doing once you're taxiing on the airport. And then we have our departure. We'll just give that a review as well. So the next 1 Charlie departure out of runway 22 right, and actually it's a pretty simple departure, as you can see on the chart. We can climb straight direct to Charlie Hotel 377. So I'm gonna open the FMC, make sure that's all in there. Actually the first waypoint is called Rubat, then to Bista, and then we end up at Nexon, and that's indeed correct. Let's see if there are any information up here. It looks like everything is good to go. So yeah, that's a pretty simple departure, and we'll just make sure that we first climb to flight level 70. So that's what we can expect for the departure. So I'm now just gonna prepare the rest of the airplane. I'm gonna call up the ground crew to prepare for our pushback, so we're ready to go once we want to. So I'll just select Scandinavian Airlines. We don't want the icing right now. We can also do that if you want to, but it takes a bit more time, so we'll just skip it now. And I'll just prepare the rest of the aircraft. So just gonna go over the overhead panel, turn all the fuel pumps on. We don't need the center pumps because they're empty. The rest of this looks okay. Emergency lights are armed. We just turn on the seat belts, all that stuff. Yeah, just already turned on the pitot heat. We'll close the doors of the aircraft. So we are ready to go. And the departure time is in about 7 minutes, so I think we're quite well on schedule at this stage. Then the rest looks good. Engine anti-ice will turn on engine anti-ice after startup because of the icy conditions outside. All the doors seems to be closed. We'll set up the packs. The packs are running. APU bleed is on. Our cruise altitude is going to be flight level 350, and our landing altitude, I'll just for convenience look at the last waypoint. Seems about 1,000 feet at Milan is the altitude of that airport, 1,000. And then also turn on the anti-collision lights. If you want to, you can also tune in some frequencies and then put in some courses right here. In this case, I'm not really seeing anything in particular that I would really want to tune. But maybe I'll just tune the Kastrup VOR. I'm just going to put the auto brakes to RTO and then make sure that the rest of the panel is set. I'm going to switch off the dome lights right now. You will kind of want to make sure that you can see well outside. So having that really bright cockpit is not really a good thing to have. Just make sure the lights are dimmed inside so you can see well outside, which is what you would do in real life as well. So alright, I think the aircraft is pretty well set up, and we've reviewed the departure, and the departure is pretty straightforward in this case, so I don't think we have to worry that much. So we're pretty much good to go, I think. What you want to make sure is that the pushback trunk is ready to go, so I'm going to remove the wheel chocks. And if you're using a pushback utility like GSX, you can just release the parking brakes at some point, and then you should be good to go. Because when ATC gives you a clearance to push back, then you should be able to push back immediately. And I'll just go through the before start checklist. The flight deck door is closed and locked. Fuel, we got 3860. Let's take a look at this display. 3860, 3910. You couldn't see all that, but we have enough fuel on board for this flight, and it's correct as per the flight plan. Then we have the passenger signs are on and the fuel pumps are on as well. The windows are locked. MCP, we got V2 149er. Heading is the initial heading 221, and altitude is flight level 70 in this case, first altitude that we're climbing through. The V speeds, just make sure that you are aware of those, that they're put in there. So we have V1 135, rotate 144, and V2 149. CDO pre-flight is completed. The rudder and aileron trim are free and at 0. So it's looking good. Taxi and takeoff briefing is completed, and the anti-collision lights on. So that completes the before start checklist. So we should now be ready to ask for pushback. And again, just listen on the frequency for a while. Make sure you're not interrupting any instruction. And when it's your turn, you can go. In this case, it's not very busy on this frequency, so I think we'll be fine. Scandinavian 687, request startup and pushback.
Scandinavian 687, push and start approved, QNH 1024.
Push and start approved, QNH 1024, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so the pushback is approved. Also, the controller gave us the QNH again. It's of course very important that you have set that correctly. So QNH 1024. And we should be good to go now. So I'm just going to release the parking brakes, and we should be starting pushback momentarily. Alright, so that's a message from the ground crew that we cannot start our engines until the pushback has been completed, so we'll wait with that, and then during the pushback we'll just enjoy the views a little bit here at Copenhagen airport in the rain, and we'll also take a look out for traffic, whether we can see any other airplanes in the area. And And as you can see, there's quite a lot of patchy rain in the skies around Copenhagen. And there's quite a few rain spots around. So if you have some moments where you have to wait like this, you can do some things. For example, I'm gonna get the ground chart ready, so that's ready to be viewed when I need it. I can just use the aircraft parking docking chart in this case, because it will give me a good overview from the way from this gate till runway 22 right. And I will also tune in the next frequency, that's Kastrup Tower, and that frequency is 118.1. So I'll put that in the standby box, so that's ready to go. Right? So don't have to worry about that too much. We'll set the parking brakes. And even better, I can also use my phone to control the radios, but just for showing it to you guys, I will be using my mouse in the virtual cockpit this time. But just make sure you have the next frequency tuned in, it makes it a lot easier, right? So the parking brakes are set, and I think we can start our engines right now. So I'm going to turn off the packs, and if we have enough start pressure, we can start the first engine, engine number 2. And of course, as requested by the air traffic controller, also put the transponder to active mode, squawk mode Charlie, so TARA, in the Boeing 737. And we're going to add the fuel to the second engine. Alright, in the meantime the ground crew is cleared, so we should be good to go. Oh, actually we were cleared to start engines now, officially, but that's okay. I'm sure they don't mind. So, number 1 has stabilized, I'm going to start, or number 2, sorry, and number 1 we're going to start right now. And we'll add the fuel. And as you can hear on in the background already a lot of ATC chatter is going. So that's pretty interesting. We'll probably see some other traffic, a lot of other traffic coming by tonight, since there are quite a lot of ATC around, so that's always nice. Alright, and then we'll just take care of the rest of the airplane. I'll put the generators on. I'll put the packs back on, isolation valve auto. The APU bleed can turn off. Engine start switches to continuous. The speed or the auto brakes are RTO. We'll do a check of the flight controls, make sure they are all working. Which is of course essential if you're flying. Even when you're flying on VATSIM, or especially if you're flying on VATSIM. And we'll check the rudder. Okay, that's looking good. And I'm going to set the flaps for departure, so flaps set at 5. And the rest seems to be set. And the anti-collision light's already on, so we should be ready to go. Oh, actually there's an aircraft in front of us, as you can see, so that's pretty nice. So again, keep a good eye on the charts. Probably via Mike, Alpha, and then to runway 22 right. Okay, so just make sure you already know what your taxi route is. And we can also turn off the APU, and we'll turn on the engine anti-ice. So, before taxi checklist, generators are on, the probe heats are on, anti-ice, engine anti-ice on, isolation valve is auto, engine start switch is continuous. We'll check the recall is checked. Auto brake is RTO, flaps 5 on the night, engine start switches, or engine start leavers idle detent, flight controls are checked, and the grounding is clear. So before taxi checklist is completed, we're good to go. And make sure you have a pen and a paper with you, so you can write down the taxi instruction. So I'm just going to have the chart at the ready next to me, so I can easily, comply with the instruction and reply to the air traffic controller. And I already know which taxiways lead up to runway 22 right, so it shouldn't be a huge problem. Scandinavian 687, request taxi. So I hope the controller hears this.
Scandinavian 687, taxi the Mike, Sue, and Alpha, hold short of runway 12.
Taxi via Mike, Zulu and Alpha, hold short of runway 12, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so in this case we just received a couple of taxiways, Mike, Zulu and Alpha, as you can see on the chart, which will take us to runway 22 right, and a very important instruction, hold short of runway 12. So you definitely have to comply with that, because that runway might have some traffic crossing, so we'll just make sure that we're not blocking that runway. We'll hold short of the runway until we get clearance to cross. At some airports you might not need the clearance, but at this airport we definitely have to, so make sure you keep that in mind. So we have to taxi via Zulu and Alpha, so we'll just taxi out of the apron here, but basically it's going to arm the auto throttle already. And as you can see, it looks pretty nice outside. Nice evening flight on the VATSIM networks. So when you taxi, just take it easy. You know, there's no need to rush extremely. So just make sure you know how to find your way. Make sure you kind of get this top-down view using the chart. So in this case, we should be passing Mike, or sorry, taxiway Yankee via Mike, and then the next taxiway, as you can see, also indicated by this taxiway sign to the left, is Zulu, and then the first right is going to be Alpha. Alright, so just it's probably the best way to do this taxiing stuff. Just make sure you understand that top-down view, and then you should be pretty good to go. So Alpha is here to the right, and we'll hold short of runway.
Scandinavian 687, contact now, coordinate the Kastrup Tower on frequency 118.1. Bye-bye.
Kastrup Tower 118.1, Scandinavian 687. Bye-bye. So in this case we received a handoff directly to Kastrup Tower, because the tower controller is usually in charge of the runways, so we'll just probably have to ask him for clearance to cross this runway, and then we probably can stay with that frequency because the taxi route to runway 2 to right is pretty short anyway. So 118.1 is for tower, and I'm already going to move to the next frequency, which is 119.8 for departure. Okay, so we should now be with tower, and we can report that we're holding short of this runway. Scandinavian 687, good evening, holding short runway 12.
Scandinavian 687, Kastrup Tower, good evening, cross runway 12, and via Alpha, holding point runway 2 to right.
Cross runway 12 and via Alpha to holding point runway 2 to right, Scandinavian 687. Alright, so we're clear to cross the runway.
611 after Boeing 737.
And we'll turn on the strobe lights because we're crossing on the runway.
Right to left on Alpha, cross runway 12, then Alpha, hold short Zulu. Crossing company on 12, hold short Zulu to cross 12, schedule 61.
So there's another aircraft here taxiing back probably to the apron after landing. So you can see some pretty nice views here on the VATSIM network. Very nice. So we've crossed the runway, so we can just turn off the strobe lights right now. Put them to steady. And we'll just follow this Ryanair probably.
And Scandinavian 687 behind the departing Boeing 737, line up runway 2 to right and wait behind.
Behind the Boeing 737, line up and wait behind runway 2 to right, Scandinavian 687. So we received an instruction to line up on runway 2 to right. You can see a pretty quick departure. And I already heard from the other aircraft that he has to contact departure on 119.8, so indeed after departure we'll contact that frequency ourselves. And once this aircraft is taking off, we can just line up on the runway, and then we should be pretty good to go pretty quickly. Just gonna do the before takeoff checklist. Flaps are 5 for green light, and the stabilizer trim is at 5.2 units. And that completes the before takeoff checklist. So I will just hold at the runway, wait for this Ryanair 737 to take off. Looks like he's going already, so I think we can slowly line up already. Once you are on the runway, at least make sure that your squawk mode is set to Charlie, TARA, so that the departure or approach controller or the radar controller can see you on their radar scope. And also put the strobe lights to strobe and steady. That's what you usually do. So we'll just line up on this runway. Runway 22 right. It's a beautiful view and we're ready to go, basically. So at this stage we'll just wait for the takeoff clearance from Kastrup Tower. I'm going to arm LNAV by the way, since we just want to follow the route as we depart. Departure frequency is set in here in the standby box, so we can easily switch. So we don't have to worry about that. We just focus on the takeoff for now.
Scandinavian 687 after departure, contact Copenhagen approach 119, that's a 8. Surface wind 240, breeze 12 knots, runway 22 right, clear for takeoff, have a nice flight, bye-bye.
Runway 22 right, clear for takeoff, and after departure, contact Copenhagen approach 119.8, Scandinavian 687, thank you, bye-bye. So, that instruction was clear. We have a slight crosswind from the right, runway from heading of 240. So we can now just take off, basically. I'll just advance the thrust levers to 40%. And I'm going to hit the toga button. Alright, thrust is set. $80 knots.
Copenhagen Tower, good evening, North Shore 4257, ILS 22 left.
Rotates.
North Shore 4257, Kastrup Tower, good baby, evening 27. Surface wind 240, breeze 12 left, runway 22 left, clear to land. Please vacate Bravo 4 or later.
Zoom in a little bit so I can see the display
2 left, middle end, and
properly.
last again, there's North Shore 4257.
And just for convenience, I'll arm the
Bravo 4 or later.
autopilot already.
Or later, North Shore 4257.
And we're going to go to the next frequency, 119.8, Copenhagen approach. I forgot to turn on the landing lights, by the way. Don't forget to do that. Normally. Doesn't really matter a huge deal for VATSIM, but it's kind of realistic to have them on. Copenhagen approach, good evening, Scandinavian 687, passing 2,000 feet, Nixon 1 Charlie.
Good evening, Scandinavian 687, Copenhagen approach, identify, climb flight level 190.
Climb flight level 190, Scandinavian 687. So, we received an instruction to go to a higher flight level 190. And I'll just increase the speed now and accelerate the airplane. And I will switch to the standard QNH already because we're going to climb to a flight level. And we seem to be almost clear of the clouds right now. So this controller just gave us an instruction to climb, and we'll just follow our SID as instructed. I'm going to put the flaps to 1. Nice reflections there. And I'm going to put the flaps up, and we're going to engage VNAV, so we're going to follow the vertical profile as calculated by the flight management system. And we'll just wait for further instructions. What we can expect now is probably a handoff to the next frequency, the radar controller, and at some point. So if I look at the frequency list right now, that will be 121.37, so I'm going to put that in the standby box again. So make sure you have that prepared. 121.37, and we can kind of clean up the aircraft, make sure everything is set. We can turn the engine anti-ice off at this stage because we're clear of the clouds, and the rest is looking pretty good. We can turn off the taxi lights and the retractable landing lights, and put the gear to off. Auto brake are off, and this transponder is still set, so looking good. We can do the after takeoff checklist. Engine bleeds are on. That's of course very important. Make sure we have air conditioning available. The packs are set at auto. Landing gear is up and off, flaps up, no lights, and the altimeters are standard, which completes the after takeoff checklist. So, pretty smooth departure out of Copenhagen. This was not the most busiest departure, but if you're new to the VATSIM network, this is kind of a perfect evening. You know, not too much traffic, not too busy frequencies, and a lot of controllers online, where you can really, you know, make use of the different frequencies without having one radar controller controlling everything, where it easily becomes a mess on frequency. Actually, this is a perfect condition if you're flying your first flight of VATSIM, so I think we can be very happy. And we'll just further let the aircraft climb further and see what further instructions we will get from Copenhagen approach. So we can still see some lights on the ground down there. It's a little bit snowy. I'm not sure if there's snow in the real world, but it looks pretty good. And we'll just continue our climb.
Over. Scandinavian 687, contact Copenhagen control 121.37, good evening.
Contact Copenhagen control 121.37, Scandinavian 687, bye bye. Alright, so we'll go to the next frequency, Copenhagen control, as you could hear, 121.37. I'm not sure yet what the next frequency will be, but we'll just find out. Make sure you keep a good ear on the frequency, make sure you know what further instructions you get. So we'll report with this controller and we'll report our flight level that we're passing. Copenhagen control, good evening, Scandinavian 687, next 1 Charlie departure, passing flight level 140 for flight level 190.
Scandinavian 687, hello, Copenhagen control, identified, continue climb flight level 350.
Continue climb flight level 350, Scandinavian 687. Alright, so we received a further climb instruction. I'm going to put the altitude to 350, and that's about it. You know, it's not that hard at this stage. You just continue flying your route. You might get it direct at some point, but I'm not sure yet. So actually, we're now entering the relaxed stage of the flight. So just going to clean up the cockpit a little bit further. Looking good, everything. So I think we did a good job, apart from the landing lights that I somehow always forget when I make a VATSIM video. But don't think we have to worry about that too much. But as you can see, you know, if you watch the previous videos in this VATSIM tutorial series, you can see that the phraseology used is very similar for the other airports that I used in that video in the phraseology guide. So it's pretty standard. Added difficulty right now is that you have the VATSIM radio quality, which is not that good. As you can hear, we have a lot of other people talking on the frequency, which might make it harder. So just keep in mind that you follow the tips of my previous video in order to deal with those situations.
Havana 5, Julius Foxtrot, contact Bremen, radar frequency 25.025, good evening. 125, decimal 025, Ryanair 5, Julius Foxtrot, good evening.
So as you could hear, that was a Ryanair. I think that's a Ryanair that took off in front of us. And as you could hear, we already received another frequency, and this is actually ideal. So I'm just going to look up where this flight is going to see if it's the same route. Because in that case, it's very likely that you know, the instructions that we hear from that aircraft are going to be very similar to the instructions that we're going to receive. So I expect that Bremen radar is indeed the next frequency, and it seems like that is indeed the case. And this Ryanair aircraft is flying to Rome, so it should be pretty much a similar route. And indeed, Bremen radar is online, so that's going to be our next frequency. So we'll just keep that in mind. And in that case, we can already tune Bremen radar. I'll have to look what the frequency is. Looks like it's going to be 123.22, I think. And we'll just again confirm exactly what the frequency will be. So air traffic control gives the hand off, and it should be pretty okay. So, you know, if you're new to the VATSIM network and you want to have a bit more confidence when you're flying, it's also good to have other pilot flying in front of you, maybe a friend, so you can already anticipate what the next instruction will be, because the instruction should be pretty similar. So using an app like VATMap or maybe AccuMap or whatever to see what your position is very helpful. As you can see, we're now flying still in the Danish airspace, but indeed I expect to get the handoff to Bremen radar pretty soon. You can see that most of Germany is active, so we can probably expect a lot of different controllers there, which is nice. And then it looks like Switzerland is not covered yet, but Italy, in the northern part, at least of Milan, is online, so that's a good sign. So yeah, a lot of different controllers that we can expect, and also a lot of traffic. So in a country like Germany,
Scandinavian 687, contact Bremen, frequency 125.025, good evening.
contact Bremen on 125.025, Scandinavian 687, bye bye. So the correct frequency is 125.025, which is abbreviated here in 125.02. So that's our next frequency. And yeah, we can expect a lot of traffic in German airspace. It tends to be pretty busy. So we'll just see what we'll get. 125.02 for Bremen radar. Okay, we got a nice controller here again. You might remember it from my other VATSIM videos. So we'll just report and log in with this controller. We're inbound Gypto. Bremen radar, guten Abend, Scandinavian 687, inbound Gypto, passing flight level 285 for flight level 350.
Yeah, Scandinavian 687, good evening, good afternoon, well, good Abend. Direct Marburg, Whiskey Romeo Bravo, climb maintain flight level 350.
Direct to Whiskey Romeo Bravo, climb flight level 350, Scandinavian 687, thank you. So, in this case, we received a direct to Whiskey Romeo Bravo. That's a VOR station, and usually the controllers on VATSIM will also spell that identifier of the VOR station for you, so it's easier to find. I'm not even sure myself what the something like Warburg. Yeah, I can look on my flight plan to see what it is. Indeed, it's called Warburg, so that's the name of the VOR station in this case, and identifier Whiskey Romeo Bravo. So we're now flying direct to that waypoint, and that's the only instruction that we really got, and we just can continue our climb to flight level 350. And probably the next thing that we can expect is again another handoff to another controller, probably something like a Langen radar. So I'm just gonna see what the next frequency will be. So the next frequency is likely to be something like 127.72 or 135.65. I'm not really sure at this stage. I'm not really aware myself of the exact sectors, but the air traffic controllers of course do know. So we can expect either of these frequencies next. Right, so as you can see, a very friendly controller in this case, and yeah, we can just continue our climb and head for Milan, Malpensa. And we're approaching flight level 350 now, and we should now have a pretty smooth cruise. As you can see, got a nice amount of tailwind, 99 knots, so that's looking good. And this is basically the quiet part of the flight, not much to do here, but we'll just plan our arrival about 20 minutes before our top of descent, so we can really understand what our arrival will look like, using the latest information about Milan and yeah, the weather at the airport and the active runway at the airport. So that's something for later during the flight. So I just had to look at the VAT map again. It seems that the Ryanair in front of us is taking a different route, so he's entering a different airspace than us. So I think we'll stay with this controller for the time being, and then probably Langen radar is next. We'll just find out. And in the meantime, it's very busy on VPilot. As you can see, there are a lot of controllers online on VATSIM at this stage. Even though it's a Monday night, apparently a lot of people are free to control, so that's nice. So while we're cruising, I'll just show you around a little bit through the cockpit. Just show you how I've set it up. You've probably seen it already before. So we've got here the yoke, and yeah, it works pretty nicely. We have here the iPad, so I can view VATMap, my position, or the charge when necessary. I have here the joystick to control the steering tiller and the rudder. If I'm not using the rudder pedals, but it's mainly used for steering tiller on the ground. And I can also have a push to talk key here again to talk to air traffic control when taxiing. And my push to talk key on the yoke here is in the back, so I can talk while steering the airplane. And here I've got the side tech throttle, as you know. My checklist, mouse, paper and pen to write down information, very important. CP flight MCP, and the keyboard is set up with the EVIS functions. And I've got my second monitor here to keep an eye out on vPilot and the recording software. And then yeah, here we got the cockpit. So yeah, the setup works pretty well. Make sure you design your setup as well. You know, regardless of your budget, you can design your cockpit in such a way in order to make it very comfortable for flying. And for me, this is pretty comfortable. It looks pretty good. So yeah, just make sure you give that a good amount of time of thought to make sure it's nicely set up for you. Okay, so we're still early into the flight, so there's not much happening at this stage, and I'm not receiving the ATIS frequency yet on vPilot of Milan. But on apps like VATMap, you can easily view the ATIS and see what's going on already, so you can kind of already plan ahead on the arrival. So currently the information is Delta at Milan Malpensa, and the expected ILS approach arrival runway 35 right, departure runway is 35 left, transition level is 70, the wind is calm, CAV OK, the temperature is -2, dew point is -7, QNH 1025, no SIG, and advise on initial contact you have information Delta. So so far it goes as planned, runway 35 right for arrival, and the weather is perfectly fine, there should be no issue. And I would recommend, if you fly on VATSIM for the first time, try to fly in weather that's kind of stable. It will make things easier for you.
Scandinavian 687, contact on Langen radar on frequency 27.725, 127.72. Have a safe landing, Merry Christmas, Dr.
Contact Langen radar on 127.72, Scandinavian 687, Merry Christmas to you too, bye bye. Alright, so we'll go to the next frequency, 127.72 is Langen radar for us. There we go. And we'll switch. And we should now be with Langen radar. And the waypoint we're inbound to is Warburg still. We'll just wait for the instruction to be finished.
QNH 1028.
The aircraft seems to have a little bit of difficulty keeping with the track. Probably because of the high winds here, I'm not sure. So the instruction has finished, so we now should be able to call. Langen radar, guten Abend, Scandinavian 687 inbound Warburg, flight level 350.
Scandinavian 687, Langen radar, guten Abend, identified.
Alright, as you can see, that's it. So we didn't receive any other additional instruction except this. That's we're identified, so the air traffic controller can see us on his radar scope. And yeah, we'll just keep flying on this route. We didn't receive any direct, so and we can take a look at the progress page maybe to see how we're doing. As you can see, our arrival time is going to be 21:07 Zulu, so that's a little bit less than an hour. So yeah, we should be arriving nicely on time because we're also departed on time, so that's a good thing. And we got a huge tailwind, as you can see, 100 knots, so that's pretty good. So as you can already hear on this frequency, there's a lot more ATC chatter going on. Because this controller is probably, controlling a big airspace, and there might be some aircraft approaching certain airports where there's no approach controller, so he has to give those aircraft factors. So you can really expect those frequencies to be really busy, so you really need to keep a good eye out on frequency. Make sure you don't miss your call sign once you're called, so don't fall asleep, that's the basic message. Don't forget, you always can get some coffee to keep yourself awake, that's very important. And some good food in the cockpit is also very important, so keep that in mind. Tastes good.
Lufthansa 1046, I called you 4 times now. Contact bottle on 131.10. 1.10, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's going to happen when the controller is already trying to call you 4 times. I mean, it's not a huge problem, but kind of just keep in mind that controllers might be trying to reach you, so don't leave the cockpit without notice. You might wonder what to do when you need to make use of the bathroom. Well, just tell the controller via private message, or if necessary via the frequency, but maybe even better via private message. Is it okay if I leave the cockpit for 2 minutes? And then that should be perfectly fine. But don't expect that you're able to gonna be taking a shower or go and do some shopping when you're flying. That's not going to happen, of course, especially not on such a busy route with a lot of air traffic control and with a lot of switching between air traffic controllers. It's of course not the thing to do. Just try to put a little bit of effort in your flight, try to make it fun for the controllers as well, because the controllers put a lot of time and effort in this as well, and receive a lot of training. And spend a lot of time on the VATSIM network just to guide the pilots around. So I think it's part of the respect that I talked about in the first video, the very first video of this VATSIM tutorial series. That you just make sure you kind of know what you're doing, but more importantly also just pay attention, so that controllers don't get frustrated about you. Alright? So our speed is, flight is speeding up nicely. As you can see, a huge amount of tailwind, 102 knots. You don't see that too often. So we have a pretty high ground speed and true airspeed. It's of course what we kind of expected, but the ground speed is what's being affected when you have a lot of tailwind, or headwind for that matter. So we should be arriving a little bit earlier, or at least catch up on time a little bit. And in a few minutes I think I'll take a look at the approach. Because at airports like Milan, you kind of have to take into account the terrain around the airport. Of course, Milan is at the base of the Alps, basically, so you can expect that when you descend into Milan, you're flying over the Alps, so that's really something to take into account and be part of your flight planning. Other than that, it should be a pretty beautiful approach. Unfortunately, it's night right now, but if you would do this flight during daytime, it would look even better. But just keep in mind about the terrain of the airport and the surroundings, so that you're aware of what's happening there. So here's an overview that I got from the VATSIM Italy website. Again, on those FAQ websites you can find a lot of information. So here you have kind of an overview of the airspace of Milan, and I think this picture illustrates pretty well how complex that airspace can be. Of course, not every controller on this little map will be online, because the larger controllers, like the radar controllers, will just take over the ATC at one of the smaller airports. But you can kind of see, we're arriving from Switzerland, where there's no ATC currently on the VATSIM network, and then we'll probably go to Milan and Milano approach, and then we'll make our way towards Milan Malpensa airport. So as you can see, a lot of different sectors are around there, so it's very interesting to kind of view these charts and get to know the ATC structure. But again, if you've watched my videos about phraseology, then you know that it's a top-down structure, so the radar controller controls everything below them. And if there's a tower controller suddenly coming online, for example, then tower will take over the functions of ground and delivery, and then radar will do both radar and approach. So keep that in mind. So as you can see, we have about 36 minutes to go. And I think it's a good time now to review the approach into Milan Malpensa. And I'll just take a look another time at the ATIS in Milan to make sure I have the latest information, to see whether anything has changed or not, and also to kind of get an overview of the controllers that are online currently. Still, there's no ATC in Switzerland, as you can see on the VAT map, so we expect to be on UNICOM during that time. And in Milan there seems to be tower online, approach and center controller. And I'll take a look at the ATIS, what current information says. So we have Milan Malpensa information echo at time 1950. Expect ILS approach arrival runway 35 right.
Scandinavian 687.
Oh.
Scandinavian 687, monitor UNICOM on 122.8. The fighter is not online, so have a nice flight. Bye bye.
Monitor UNICOM 122.8, Scandinavian 687. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Okay, so in this case we go to UNICOM 122.8. There's no ATC over Switzerland. 122.8. So we're now on the UNICOM frequency, and I think it is a good moment to relax a bit from all the ATC chatter in the background. And basically, if you want now, you can type in vPilot in the bottom box to other pilots in the area what you're doing, and you'll probably see some messages popping up on the top of the screen when pilots are reporting their position or whatever. But during the cruise there's not really not much to say. You really don't have to say that you're inbound every waypoint or something. Maybe some things you want to say is, for example, when you're ready to descend, or when you're really approaching an airport, or final for a runway. You know, those are really important parts of the flight where you can get in collision with other traffic, so it's really important to report your position in this case. But in this case there's not much to do actually, so we'll just leave it like this, and we have the perfect opportunity to review our approach for a bit. So I was busy with the ATIS, let's review it a bit more. Information echo, so runway 35 right as expected, departure runway 35 left, so we can probably maybe can see an aircraft departing to the left of us. Transition level 70, so I'm really going to put that in the flight management system. Here in forecast 070. And what else do we have? Wind is calm, variable between 020 and 080, so wind should not be an issue for this landing. CAV okay, so clouds and visibility okay, temperature -4, dew point -7, QNH 1025, and we can already put the QNH in here 1025. So when we push the standard button, it will automatically go to the local QNH once we're ready to descend. No significant change, and advice on initial contact you have information echo. Right, so that will be fine. We'll just wait for the next controller to pop up, and in the meantime we can review the approach. As you can see, the top of the sand here is coming up on the navigation display. It's still a little bit far out. It's about 60 miles, so we have plenty of time to review the approach. So for that we'll go to the approach chart first of all. So as you can see, each and every country's chart looks a bit different, especially this one. It looks quite a bit different from other charts. So it sometimes takes a little getting used to a new layout. If you have never graphed charts, it's easier to review. But anyways, we are planning to arrive at Akasu as our last waypoint, as you can see on the route. And then we'll just follow the Akasu to a hotel arrival, because that will take us to that last waypoint right here, Sokbu. And from there we can start our approach into Milan on runway 35 right. So that should be okay. So we arrive at Akasu, and then we can just open up the flight management system, see if everything is in there. I should have selected the correct arrival if I'm Akasu to hotel, ILS Zulu 25 right, and then transition Sokbu. I'm just gonna review that for you guys in a minute. But this just the initial phase should be correct at least. So Akasu, Mike Charlie 414. Then we have Ixora, Mike Charlie 415. And and there are no specific restrictions yet on this route, so that should be fine. I might want to turn on the terrain display though on my side. You can also turn on the weather radar on the first officer side if you want to. So let me do that so we can see the weather if necessary at this airport. But since we're passing over the Alps, it's good to have the terrain display open so you kind of have an idea of the terrain around you. We continue with your approach, Mike Charlie 415, and then 405, 406, 407, and then Sokbu. And we have to be at that waypoint at 4000 or above apparently. And then we can go to the next chart, that's the ILS approach chart. This Sokbu is the initial approach fix, so that's where we're going to start your approach. And basically from that waypoint, as you can see, we can just directly track towards the ILS, the localizer, or runway 35 right basically. So if I go into plan mode, maybe you can see it a little bit better. So here we have the entire approach. We go this way, then eventually we're going to end up here at Sokbu, and then we make this right turn heading 034 pretty much. That should be kind of the direction that we're flying into, and then we can intercept the localizer to runway 35 right. So that's a pretty straightforward approach. Again, this is just a standard approach as you would fly if there's no ATC around, but there is ATC, so we might expect some different instructions. But you know, the controller might also just clear us for the Akasu to a hotel arrival, and then we fly to Sokbu, and then after that the controller might send us a direct to this NDB Novara, for example. You know, it might just happen, and then at that point we're going to start the ILS approach into Milan Malpensa for runway 35 right. So yeah, normally of course you can just review this chart from the top to the bottom. Again, we have the aerodrome elevations 768 feet, ILS Zulu. It's a little bit different from ILS Yankee, as you can see, because ILS Yankee doesn't contain the initial approach fix or anything. It's basically for radar vectors, but I just like to plan this arrival, because if ATC instructs us to really fly this route, we at least have it available. What else can we see? There's a lot of high terrain up to the north, so we really need to keep a good eye on the missed approach procedure if we require to go around, and make sure that's correctly entered. But anyways, we'll start at 4000 or 3000. If we're getting radar vectored, as you can see on the chart, we'll probably expect 3000. But if we're flying from Sokbu, we start our approach at 4000 on an inbound course of 348. So I'm going to put that here on the course 348. There we go. And I'll also tune that on the first officer side 348. And then we can put in the ILS frequency as well. Let me see what that is. I'll just cross check with the FMC if that's correct. Indeed, 109.9 is our ILS frequency. So we'll just put that in the navigation radios. 109.9, 109.9. Okay. Looking good. And the descent is pretty much straightforward. We're just gonna fly a standard 3-degree glide slope, it looks like, and we can set the minimums. As you can see here, obstacle clearance altitude and obstacle clearance height. Again, altitude is the altitude is the you know, the missed approach altitude above mean sea level, and obstacle clearance height is the altitude above ground level. So those are two different things. When you're using the obstacle clearance altitude, you use the barrow setting of the minimums, because that one uses the actual altimeter, you know, where you set the Q and H for to measure the height, or yeah, the altitude above the mean sea level in order to determine the minimums. But if you're going to use obstacle clearance height, you're really using the altitude above ground level. In that case, you use the radio function of the minimums right here. So I'm just going to set, since we're not flying a category 2 or 3 approach, I'm just going to set the obstacle clearance altitude, Basically we can set it at 870 feet because we're category C aircraft, and it should not be necessary to fly any higher category, so we just pick Cat 1. So we'll set that to 870 feet. Oh, that's the wrong one, that's the barrel setting. 870 on the barrel for the minimums. So that's the altitude that is not in brackets. There we go. And in the meantime we also received an FC message, so we should start our descent in this case. And of course we don't have a controller right now, so we cannot ask for a descent or anything. So in this case we'll just descend ourselves. I'm gonna put in a lower altitude, something like flight level 250 for the time being. And then you could report this on UNICOM, but if there's no traffic around, it doesn't really make sense to report it on UNICOM. But anyways, we're now gonna start our descent. If there would be ATC online, I would ask the controller, Scandinavian 687 requesting descent, something like that. Or the controller would already give us an instruction to descend, for example, when ready. So that means when you reach the top descent you can descend, or when the controller doesn't say when ready. For example, the controller might say Scandinavian 687 descent flight level 250, then you have to start your descent immediately. But in this case we can just go ahead like this. So we reviewed most of the approach. I'm just going to quickly run through the descent checklist. Pressurization, the landing altitude is set. Recall, check that, is also set. Auto brake, we'll set that at 2. Landing data, we get minimums at 870 feet, and the VREF, we'll just select this one, 141 knots at flaps 30. And approach briefing is almost completed. Oh, and we have a notification, as you can see here. So in this case we'll just wait for this controller. We can contact that controller on this frequency. So since we're already descending, I'm just going to report the flight level that I'm passing and the waypoint that I'm inbound to with this controller. Milano radar, good evening, Scandinavian 687, passing flight level 308, inbound social.
Scandinavian 687 Milano, hello, identified flight level 300. Planning descent to be at flight level 190 over Akasu. And you are clear to that pass 2 kilo arrival for ILS runway 35 right.
Descent flight level 190 to reach at Akasu, cleared Akasu 2 kilo arrival for runway 35 right, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so in this case we need to kind of speed up our descent because we have received the instruction to be at this particular flight level, so I put in that restriction on this waypoint, and I hope we're going to make that. So I'm just put out full speed brakes in order to make that. If not, yeah, then we probably have to inform ATC. And actually we received a different arrival route, so the Akasu 2 kilo. So that changes our route a little bit. Instead of going to Sokpo, we actually go to this Rikon waypoint. So I'll just reselect that arrival, and as you can see it already gets busier at this stage. Akasu 2 kilo, ILS Zulu runway 35 right, and then the Rikon transition. And just to be sure, I'll also review the missed approach procedure before we continue. So we'll select altitude 190. In case of a misapproach, proceed on track 348, climb to 1450 feet. At 1450 feet, we are going to turn right as soon as possible to join Romeo Delta Lima 024, Radio 024, sorry, from Mike Papa VOR, and climb to 3000. And then it goes further, like we have to add 3000 feet steady, not further than radial 024 at 7 DME. Mike Papa, turn right to Sierra Romeo November VOR DME, and maintain 3000 until 5 DME. From that VOR, and then climb to 4000. So, That should be okay. Sierra Romeo November is indeed in the FMC. You can just again cross-check with the flight management system if the missed approach procedure is correctly in there, okay? So normally I would have be done already with the approach review. Since I'm explaining a lot, I kind of was late for the descent, so just keep in mind that you know, start in time with your approach review and your missed approach review, so you know what you're doing. Okay, and we're now going inbound Akasu, and it looks like we're catching up, so we don't have to report with ATC that we're not going to make it, so I think we'll be fine. Just going to select the correct altitude 190. And we should be pretty good to go. I think we're gonna make it. As you can see, this green line ends up at the Kastrup pretty well. And I'll already put in the next frequency, 126.75. It's probably the frequency that we're gonna get next. So I already have to tune in there. And yeah, this is the exciting part of the approach. As you can see, we have some pretty nice view over the Alps right here. Well, I can't see that much, but I can definitely see the mountains, so that's pretty cool. So I'm using full speed brakes at the moment, really to expedite this descent, otherwise we're not going to make that flight level at Akasu. But it seems like we've catched up pretty nicely. The correct approach is now selected.
687, contact Milano 126.75, bye bye.
Contact Milano 126.75, Scandinavian 687, bye bye. So we can already go to the next frequency, Milano approach 126.75. And since we're cleared for the Akasu to Kilo arrival, just keep flying on this route. And we did not descend further yet because we're not received further descent clearance, so I'll just wait for this instructions to be finished. Speed brakes back to up, and the flight management system is now correctly set for the correct arrival. Milano approach, good evening, Scandinavian 687, flight level 190, Akasu 2 Kilo.
Scandinavian 687, good evening sir, continue descent, flight level 110.
Continue descent, flight level 110, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so we can continue our descent to flight level 110, and we'll just follow the profile for the moment since we're still flying on this particular arrival route. And I'll just take a look at the chart whether anything of this arrival is different. Doesn't look like it, so we'll just end up at this waypoint recon, and then we capture the ILS runway 35 right from the right, basically. So I think we'll be fine. Don't think we have to worry too much about at this stage, and we'll just keep descending. So a busy part of approach, especially when you suddenly get a different arrival than you expected. At that stage you just, you know, keep flying the airplane, don't worry too much about your planned route, just try to follow ATC instructions as carefully as possible, and you should be okay. In this case we can just select a different arrival in the flight management system, and we already planned the approach for runway 35 right, so it's not like we're landing at an entirely different runway or anything, so that should be fine. So we're back on the vertical profile, as you can see. I can already see the localizer from the airport, which is down there below, and looks like we can see the city already. There's quite some beautiful lights down there below, so that looks pretty good. So I'll just take a look at the ATC list again, see if we have any next frequency to tune in. Looks like only tower will be online at this stage, so 119.0 is going to be the next frequency. Maybe in the meantime, while we're descending, we can also take a look at the ground chart, which actually should also be part of your arrival procedure or review, so you know what to do when you vacate the runway. In this case we'll be landing on runway 35 right, as you can see on the chart. So we'll probably vacate.
Scandinavian 87. Continue to descend 6,000 feet in position level 70, which is 105.
Could not understand that part of the transmission, so I'm just going to ask for a say again there. Descend 6,000 feet and say again the last part for Scandinavian 687.
Scandinavian 687, the transition level is 70, and the QNH is 1025, descend 6,000 feet.
Roger, descend 6,000 feet and QNH 1025, Scandinavian 687. Alright, so don't be afraid to ask for a say again, so the controller set this QNH is 1025, the transition level is 70, but I'm already going to switch to the local QNH in this case, in order to make sure I'm on the correct vertical profile. So local QNH already set, and we can do the approach checklist. Altimeters 1025 is set. So we can just continue on this profile for now. Looking good. And yeah, I was just talking about when how we vacate, probably via echo, and then to the left we can probably taxi to a particular stand. I'm not really sure where Scandinavian would park, at which stand exactly, but we'll just see what happens. Right here we have an overview of all the gates, so it's good to give all the numbers of the gates a little bit of a review, so you kind of know where which gate is. And it's been a while since I flew into Milan, so for me it's also something to review. And also the taxiway names, for example, it's good to review them a little bit. So we have here all the 400 gates, 500 gates, the 600 gates on the right here, and some other stands. So yeah, it looks pretty easy. So kind of know based on the number where which gate is, so that's alright. And then once we vacate, we can probably, let's take a look, vacate left via echo, then echo mic, then to taxiway whiskey, and we can probably expect to be holding before runway 35 left, because there might be traffic departing from that runway. So keep that in mind, that you not cross that runway once you vacate. Just take your time, okay? Another tip I like to give: keep your heading buckle aligned. So once ATC gives you vectors, you know you can switch to heading mode, for example, easily. Looking good. Some lights popping up here. So this is really the city of Milan, as you can see. Pretty good view. So a busy part of the approach, as you can see. So and that's because this is an event, so you can expect quite a bit of ATC chatter. So really, again, if you're new to the VATSIM network, just make sure that you fly into an airport with ATC, but without an event, preferably, because you can get overwhelming, even for me.
Descend 3,000 feet.
Descend 3,000 feet, Scandinavian 687. So 3,000 feet is the next altitude. It seems that we need some drag to slow down the airplane. And I can already turn on some of the landing lights here. So we're still flying the LNAV profile, and you know, our clearance limit is recon. So if we do not receive any instruction after that, we kind of have to ask what we need to do with the controller. But he will probably give an instruction to fly towards a certain heading in order to intercept the localizer to runway 35 right. The ILS has been tuned in as well. You can put the speed brakes back up. And just make sure that you stay on your profile as much as you can, okay? So that you're not taken by surprise when you need to descend or reduce your speed at a certain stage. So I have the tower frequency tuned in, I have the ground chart at the ready. I'm currently viewing the ILS chart, but I can easily switch to ground chart when necessary. So I'm should be pretty well set up for the approach. And everything is set here, soon put the engine switches to continuous. And I think I'll just switch to level change at this stage because we're descending below the calculated profile, so it should be okay. And also try to listen where, you know, other aircraft are on the approach, okay, so we can kind of get an idea of your position.
687, turn right, heading 290.
Right, heading 290, Scandinavian 687. So, we received a heading in this case, so we're now being vectored. As you can see, we have to make quite a big turn to the right here. And I'm just using level change right now again, which makes it easier to manage the descent during the vectoring part. And it looks like, as you can see on the navigation display, this heading will pretty much take us directly to the point where we can intercept the localizer. So we can just maybe direct to one of these waypoints right here. So we can kind of clean up our routes. We can kind of get an idea of the appropriate vertical profile, whether we're too high or too low. And we're kind of hitting the clouds right now. I might want to turn on engine anti-ice, by the way, because the temperatures are low and we're hitting the clouds. So heading 290 is set, and we're descending to 3000. And we can enjoy some of the beautiful views. So when you get vectors, it gets a bit more relaxed because air traffic control is basically in charge of your profile, your vertical profile, and your horizontal profile. Okay. So in this case I can already switch to ground chart, basically. We'll probably receive another right turn maybe.
Are you sure that you are on the 35 right?
And make sure at this stage you also received ILS. I can see the localizer icon already up here, so it should be okay. I'm just going to add some speed brakes because I'm a little bit high on profile.
Anyway, contact power on 119.0. Bye-bye.
Because I also want to reduce the speed in time.
Scandinavian 687. Turn right, heading 310.
Turn right heading 310, Scandinavian 687. So, heading 310. I initially thought he said left, but this should be correct. Alright. So there's another aircraft on approach from runway 35 left, so we'll keep that in mind. And we're not cleared for the approach yet, so I'm not gonna arm the approach or localizer mode yet. The controller should give us an approach clearance.
Scandinavian 687, clear to intercept ILS 35 right, report established.
Clear to intercept ILS runway 35 right, report established, Scandinavian 687. So in this case we are cleared for the approach, so I'm gonna arm the approach mode, so VOR localizer mode is armed. And we can soon also capture the glide slope. And I'm just gonna descend to 3000 feet first and then reduce the airspeed a little bit. So we are now established on the localizer. We're not fully established on the ILS. We are established when this thing starts to move. So then we'll report established. I'm gonna put the heading back to 348. And I'm gonna maybe I'm just gonna switch to vertical speed mode to kind of reduce my rate of descent, or I can reduce my speed as well to 160 knots until 40 me. That's kind of the usual speed that you want to have. So we're ready to descend right now to 3000 feet until we capture the glide slope. So speed brakes are still out because I want to make sure that I descend on time. Again, you can just use the VNAV function as a reference, so we're still below the profile, but that's okay because I still need to reduce my speed quite a bit. And it looks like
Scandinavian 687, contact tower 119.0, bye bye.
Tower 119.0, Scandinavian 687. Thank you very much. Bye bye. So, apparently we did not have to report established. You already assumed that we were fully established on the ILS, but that's okay. We're established on the localizer at least. So, we're approaching 3000. And I'm gonna switch to Malpensa Tower. And I'm gonna put the flaps to 1 to create some drag. We need to reduce our speed, since we're already coming up a little bit. Might want to add some more speed brakes. And then we'll report with tower that we're on the ILS. Malpensa Tower, good evening, Scandinavian 687, ILS runway 35 right.
Scandinavian 687, continue approach, number 2.
Continue approach, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so we're now instructed to continue our approach, so in this case we'll just wait for a landing clearance and make sure that the aircraft flies stably on the ILS. I can turn off the engine anti-ice since we're clear of the clouds. And just start switches to continuous. I'm going to put all the landing lights on. And I'm just going to put the gear down, which will create some extra drag for us. And we're 40 me. I'm kind of high on speed, so we should really reduce now.
Please to land, runway 35 right, UNICOM, QNH 125.
Clear to land, runway 35 right, Scandinavian 687. So I'm going to reduce the final approach speed, 146. And I'm going to put the flaps to 30. It's kind of a speedy approach, as you can see. So make sure your speed management is okay, especially if you have anti-ice on. It can be quite exciting, but we seem to be stable on the approach. Just gonna arm the speed brakes, and we can do the landing checklist. Engine start switches are continuous, the speed brake is armed, the landing gear is down, flaps 30 green lights. The landing checklist is completed, and I'll take over manually. Of course, you're free to take over manually. It's more fun. That's what flying is about. So, looking good. We're stable. The winds are very calm. Speed is looking good. We're a little bit low. Reach the minimums. Yeah, landing.
40, 30, 20, 10.
Oh, that was a firm landing. Speed brakes did not really deploy correctly, but that's okay. We've arrived in Malpensa, Milan, Malpensa. And just make sure when you're landing that you can vacate the runway, timely, so you don't, have to taxi all the way to another exit point. You don't really want to do that. Okay, looking good. And we vacated the runway at Delta, so we know where we are. We'll probably receive further instructions now.
Scandinavian 687, continue taxi Delta, operate road short on 35 left.
Continue taxi Delta, hold short runway 35 left, Scandinavian 687. Okay, so we'll just continue taxiing here. We can kind of clean up the aircraft. And I'll turn off the landing lights. There we go. Continue taxi via Delta, and we'll just hold short of runway 35 left and wait for further instructions regarding our parking position. And can turn off engine start switches. And in the meantime, we'll already start the APU.
Milano Tower, good evening, Lufthansa, approaching 235 left, right. Lufthansa 247, good evening, Malpensa Tower. Please to end, runway 35 right, with the count, QNH 1025. Clear plan from runway 35 right, thank you, sir. Lufthansa 247.
Okay, so we're now approaching runway 35 left. Just keep an eye out for other traffic. There's another airplane in front of us, and we'll see where we're gonna taxi next.
Runway 687, cross runway 35 left. Continue taxi, Papa Yankee Romeo, gate 501.
Cross runway 35 left, continue to taxi to stand 501 Scandinavian 687. Okay, we received our stand. I'll just put the strobe lights on again, because we're crossing a runway here. And there's one aircraft on approach, and we'll taxi to stand 501. And that's right here. Okay, so I'll just probably taxi via Kilo. Not sure if that's the correct route, by the way, but that will be fine. Just make sure you do not hit any other traffic. But if the air traffic controller just gives you a stand, it's you know, try to pick the default route if you know the airport. If you don't, just try to pick the best taxiway to your knowledge, which I'm gonna do now. So turn here left on Kilo. And stand 501, we enter that terminal area via Romeo, so we'll turn right in a second. So welcome to Milan, guys. I hope you enjoyed that landing, and it has been helpful so far. And Romeo is to the right here.
Milano Tower, good evening, sir. Lufthansa 246 established on 355.
246, good evening, Malpensa Tower. Continue approach, number 2.
Taxiway Romeo.
Continue approach, number 2, Lufthansa 246.
And then we'll find our parking spot. As you can see on the chart, it's kind of the end of this bay, so we should be good to go. Turn off the runway, turn off lights. Stand 504. It's kind of hard to see sometimes at these airports.
Lufthansa 227, continue taxi Delta Delta Echo, short runway 35 left.
And it should be stand 501. Gonna turn off the taxi lights so we don't turn off the strobe lights as well, by the way. And we can just park the aircraft.
Lufthansa 246, clear to land runway 35 right, with car QNH 1025.
Clear to land 35 right, QNH 125, Lufthansa 246.
Okay, make sure we park the aircraft well. Looking good. Hope we have enough speed. There we go. Set the parking brake. I'll let the APU take over. And we're gonna turn off the engines. Let's get some lights on here. So there you go, guys. That's how a flight on the VATSIM network goes. Hope you enjoyed that one. I'm just going to sign off with the controller. This is optional if you want to, but it doesn't seem to be very busy. So it's kind of polite to sign off with the last controller of your flight. Scandinavian 687 is on the blocks. Thank you very much for the ATC tonight, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
Scandinavian 687, thank you very much for flying to Malpensa. Have a good evening.
There we go. So I'll just go to a non-active frequency, and then not being disturbed by air traffic control chatter. So that's how it goes, guys. You know, I hope you get the general idea. I hope that all the knowledge came together in this video with all the, you know, phraseology, all the procedures, the FMS things that you need to manage. And it can be a bit overwhelming. As you can see, it's even overwhelming for me because I flew into an airport and I flew in only a long time ago. So, you know, with each and every flight you learn new things, I learn new things, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. As you can see, I make them as well, especially forgetting landing lights is a famous mistake by me. But anyways, just keep in mind that you're managing the aircraft well, and that you're, you know, aware of the procedures, and that you just, you know, take it easy, take it step by step, and you know, start small, preferably with a general aviation airplane, and then work your way up from there. And then before you know it, you're very comfortable with flying on the VATSIM network, and you can safely fly and join events which are very nice on this network.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed this big VATSIM video. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below so I can answer them for you. But even better, make sure you watch the other videos of this tutorial series. There's a full playlist in the description to really get to know the ins and outs of flying on VATSIM. I'd like to thank you for watching this video and for supporting me throughout this VATSIM tutorial series. And of course, there will be a lot more VATSIM videos on the AviationPro channel in the future. But I'd like to thank you really for your help, your suggestions, your comments. That really has been of help, and I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial series here on the AviationPro channel. So guys, that's it, the last VATSIM video of this VATSIM 2017 tutorial series here on the AviationPro channel. Make sure you check out some of my other videos. And if you think this series has helped you, if you found them very useful, the videos in this series, make sure you check out the description of how you can support the AviationPro channel. I put a lot of time and effort in this series. And if you think this has been useful to you, and if you want to show your appreciation, your contribution would be very much appreciated. So if you're able to, please give it a thought. It would be very much appreciated. I thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.